Welcome back. This photo, when Florida's 6-week abortion limit was signed, includes members from the National Pro-Life America group, now turning their attention to defeating Florida's proposed Amendment 4. And so now we want to welcome in Katie Glenn Daniel, State Policy Director of SBA Pro-Life America. Hello, Katie from Tampa today.
Good morning.
Katie, I think that our Twitter conversation sort of dictates my first question to you, and that is, why are you voting no on Amendment 4?
Well, first of all, I'm voting no because I want the people to continue to have a say in this important issue, and we want to continue to make the gains that we've been making in Tallahassee to protect babies and serve their moms. So if we hand this back to the courts, it will be only the courts who make decisions around this issue for the foreseeable future. We saw what happened for 50 years of Roe v. Wade. Why would we give our power back? I think that's the big first issue here, is that this is about the people and our legislatures who we send to Tallahassee being responsive to us. Under the amendment, that's impossible.
And talk about convincing voters and the battle that you have to convincing voters that that is the right thing to do. There are some polls that show that more than 60% of Floridians say that abortion should be a right. 75% of Floridians, at least in some polls, say that the 6-week ban is not a good thing. So how do you convince others that no is the way to go?
Well, we pulled the 6-week heartbeat law last year as it was going through the legislature in English and Spanish statewide, and found that 62% did support it. So there's data out there that points in all directions. What's important is that voters need to understand that this initiative goes way too far for Floridians. Your last guest was talking about what the heartbeat law does. In fact, the heartbeat law has exceptions for rape, incest, human trafficking, and fetal anomalies, as well as, of course, always allowing for women to get health care in a life-threatening medical emergency. So this is what we've seen in other states, is quite frankly lies from the proponents of these initiatives who have a financial interest in performing as many abortions as possible. What we've seen in Florida the last 3 years is a very different direction for our state. We saw our lawmakers pass the 15-week law when babies can feel pain, get overwhelmingly reelected, even picking up more pro-life seats, and then pass that heartbeat law, which will now go into effect in May. So we think Floridians are with us, and when we can talk about the truth of what the law does, they're going to see that this initiative is way too extreme for Florida.
So I'm glad that you set the record straight on the exemptions for rape and incest and health of the mother. That is important. But I do want to ask you about this, because under that law, in order to show that you've been sort of the victim of trafficking or the victim of incest or rape, you have to show documentation of that. And in fact, there's some polls, and again, it's sort of all over the place, but some surveys do show that about only 21% of assaults are actually sexual assaults are actually reported to police. Do you think that that may be preventative and worrisome for women who are victims of sexual violence?
Well, women who are victims need resources, they need support, they need services. So the law lists several different types of resources, either through law enforcement or through our medical community that could be used. But ultimately, many women are pushed towards abortion and are coerced into it in these situations. So they need to be given all their information, all their options, and not sent to Planned Parenthood, sometimes even by their abuser, to cover up evidence of a crime. So we think, the law was written taking these interests in mind, but ultimately women deserve support and protection, and the people deserve that. If there are criminals out there, particularly with the human trafficking component of this, they need to be taken off the streets.
For sure. But do you think that's too much to ask of a woman to provide documentation when so often they're too scared to go to law enforcement about it?
Well, there are multiple different types of documentation that can be provided through the law. Ultimately, we are looking to support women and protect babies. We think that this law threads the needle to do that. And we think that Floridians are going to see that if their options are some abortions, but being highly protective of children, and by the way, the legislature spending a record level of state money to support these families, or abortion on demand with no limits, with no inspection and oversight, going back to the 1980s when women were dying in South Florida abortion clinics, we think the decision is clear.
What do pro-life advocates do about Donald Trump? If Donald Trump is the candidate, and it sounds like he will be, he has come out and he did at the end of 2023 saying that he thought that the 6-week ban was a, quote, terrible mistake. Is there an effort to connect with Trump or the Trump campaign?
Well, we certainly have been communicating that he should run on his pro-life record. He did a great job in 2016 when he debated Hillary Clinton of laying out the contrast between being a pro-life and being pro-abortion, quite frankly. And he obviously brought justices to the court who were able to help us overturn Roe versus Wade, one of the worst decisions the Supreme Court has ever made. So we think he should be running on that record. He should be supporting a positive vision for families. The Democrats are all about saying, no, you can't. They tell you this baby will ruin your life. You can't do it. We see a pro-life Florida and a pro-life America that's a much more positive vision.
Talk about strategy right now, so that there have been other states like Ohio and Kansas that put referendums like this on their ballot. Ohio passed a referendum to allow abortion. So did Kansas by a margin of 59%. So are you looking at that, and what's the strategy here in Florida?
We think Floridians need to hear the truth, and the first place to look to understand the truth of these initiatives is Ohio and Michigan. I've done live radio in Michigan where people called in and they said, I had no idea that voting for this would mean that our legislature would go and overturn the state's partial birth abortion ban. In Ohio, on Good Friday last week, the ACLU filed a lawsuit trying to get rid of all of Ohio's informed consent laws, saying that women get information about alternatives. They get information about the duty of child support owed to them by the baby's father. They are saying that because of this right to abortion, women don't deserve this information. That is just how extreme these initiatives are. Floridians should look at that and vote no.
Do you think that Florida got it wrong by passing a 6-week ban? Had they left it with the 15 weeks, had the Florida legislature left it that way, there might not have been an effort to move this to the voters.
Well, I think the abortion industry is going to do this no matter what, because they won't be happy with 15 weeks. They're the ones who went into court and got in re TW overturned because they were challenging the 15-week law. So I'm proud to have testified in support of the heartbeat law. We think many Floridians are with us, saying that that is a place where we should be recognizing the unborn. And by the way, we're putting our money where our mouth is by having a record amount of spending for programs and services for moms and babies, not just through our healthcare, but across our government, really thinking about what it takes to help families thrive in our state. That's our positive vision. We think people are going to support it.
Katie, we thank you so much for being on the show today.